Okay, man. Now this is a skill that we haven't talked about yet. It has to do with putting representation of a quadratic on a coordinate plane, and when you do that, the graphic representation is known as a parabola. Okay. Now, a parabola requires that you that you take a quadratic and you create a table. A parabola requires you to graphically represent that by the points on the coordinate plane. This question relates to that specific point. It says which equation is related to the graph below. Now, everything relates to whether the parabola is narrow or whether the parabola is wide. It relates to the coefficient of the x squared term. For example, here we have y equals x squared, and the coefficient to x squared, when there's no number before it, it's always 1, and we talked about that today. And b, for example, c and d, all three of these have coefficient of greater than 1. Now you'd think that the greater the number or the coefficient before the x squared term, you would think that the parabola would get wider, but it's actually just the opposite. The larger the number before the x value, the x squared value, the larger the number, the more narrow the parabola. All right, let me show you what I mean. Suppose we have y equals x squared. Now it's a quadratic equation, and in order to plot that, you make a table, just like we do with a function. But here, instead of x value, we have an x squared value. So, as always, you start at -2 and you work your way to +2. I always want you guys to do it that way. Start at a -2 and work your way to a +2 as your x squared value. Now, it's just like the function. We're going to plug in the first value, this one here, and it's -2. All right, so -2 squared is 4. All right. Okay. -1 squared is 1. 0, 1, 4. Okay. Real easy. So we plugged in the variable for our x squared term, and it produced an output. So all you have to do here is plot the x and the y variables, just like you would when you plot a function. So let's count -2, 1, 2, and +4. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, there's our first point. Next, we have -1, +1. So -1 on the x-axis, +1. There's our second point. Third point, 0, 0. Fourth point, 1, 1. And yes, you guessed it, last but not least, 2, 4. So what you can see here is that the representation of y equals x squared on a coordinate plane, the parabola representation for y equals x squared is the graph that you see. So the correct answer would be y equals x squared.